The content presented in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute financial advice, and listeners are encouraged to consult with qualified financial professionals before making any investment decisions. The views expressed on the show are that of the guests and the host and may not be the same views of LaSalle Street Securities or LaSalle Street Investment Advisors. Welcome to Investing with Integrity, the podcast dedicated to BRI, biblically responsible investing. In each episode, we delve into the world of BRI, where we prioritize values over just financial gains. We believe true wealth encompasses the well-being of individuals, communities, and the world. Join us as we chat with industry experts, advisors, pastors, and more, sharing insights into BRI's core principles. We'll explore how companies are evaluated for ethical inclusion, ethical industries, and the impact of shareholder activism. Of course, BRI has its challenges, and we'll openly address them, offering tips on how to navigate these challenges while staying true to your values. Our goal is to empower you with resources to make informed, value-aligned investment decisions. If you want a portfolio that aligns your financial and moral goals, Investing with Integrity is your podcast. Let's discover how wisdom, principles, morals, and integrity can shape a purposeful approach to investing. Join us in exploring how faith-based values in finance can coexist harmoniously. So get ready for this transformative journey where we prioritize wisdom over worth, principles over profit, morals over money, and integrity over it all. Welcome to the Investing with Integrity podcast. My name is Jeff Tellerico. I am your host. I am honored and blessed today to have with us Stephen Kump. Stephen aims to shape the world to be more generous. He leads CharityVest, which is a technology company aiming to catalyze generosity by giving everyone a donor-advised fund or a charitable giving account. He worked for over 10 years as a consultant to nonprofit organizations, philanthropists, corporate leaders, and private equity investors, most recently with Bain & Company. He's a former U.S. Cavalry officer. Thank you for your service, Stephen. We appreciate that. He also holds an MBA from the Yale School of Management and earned a bachelor's degree in economics and management from Georgia Tech. I believe they're the Yellow Jackets, correct?
You got it, Jeff.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, Stephen. We're so glad you're here with us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Jeff. Super pleasure to be here. Anytime I get the opportunity to talk about generosity and tools for generosity, it's going to be a fun day. So I'm looking forward to this. My background, as sort of my bio alludes to, is been meandering. I consider that a huge blessing. I consider myself the world's wealthiest man in terms of life experience, at least thus far. Been in the Army, had the privilege of leading soldiers all the way up to helping corporate leaders, Fortune 500 companies be more strategic. And now we're building tools for generosity. And the bridge of all that experience was time after being a management consultant, feeling led to do something more meaningful for the world and for the kingdom. And I became a philanthropy advisor. So using that analytical business consulting toolkit to help major donors be more strategic with their giving. Questions like, hey, I'm really passionate about, my heart is breaking for this Syrian refugee crisis. This was back in 2015. But I don't know a thing about Syria. Can you help me put together a strategy to allocate a few $1 million to the Syrian refugee crisis? And so we would put together a strategy to help them do that. Or a donor who says, I really am passionate about this organization and I want to give them some more money. Is that a good idea? What's the impact going to look like with this next $1 million that I'm going to give this organization? And so we helped donors be more strategic with their decision making. And in the midst of all of that, pretty much all of my clients had donor advised funds. Pretty much all of them. And so I got exposed to the goodness of donor advised funds and how useful they were. My wife and I adopted one, and it actually changed behaviorally a few things how we gave. We actually talked more about giving, even though we weren't necessarily giving more, just the idea of setting it aside first and then figuring out where it was going to go. The fruit of that was talking a lot more about giving. So that got our attention. And then the other thing was my clients complained about their donor advised funds fairly frequently. to the point where I took it upon myself to have some conversations with a few donor advised fund sponsors, kind of going behind the curtain and saying, hey, what is the deal here? And the issues were everything from fees to a couple of mistakes being made to like, hey, I really want to do this thing, but the answer is no. All of the whys, when you ask why enough times, all of them for all those issues came back to technology. And I became over time convicted that this was an issue. And moreover, I didn't see anyone building new technology for the donor advised fund space. And eventually just felt convicted that somebody needed to step in the space and build some new financial technology for donor advised funds, not just to solve those sort of immediate problems, but also to enable the future of what donor advised funds can do, especially for the millennial and Gen Z generations coming along. They're about to be the beneficiaries of the great wealth transfer, and will be in the driver's seat of giving here quickly. And they're used to everything being super simple and quick here. And that is not where donor advised funds have been over the last decade or so. And so we're endeavoring to change that. And our mission statement is to catalyze generosity. We build better tools for generosity. And our vision is that we see the millennial generation give $1 trillion away through our technology.
That's amazing. That $1 trillion is lining up with, I had a guest a couple of weeks ago that talked about their firm, and they want to do this Rescue 1T, where they want to rescue $1 trillion from Wall Street and put it back into faith-based type investing. So they get $1 trillion, you get $1 trillion. Let's be Oprah for a minute. Everybody gets $1 trillion, right?
Trillions all around. Let's go.
Trillions all around. Trillions for everybody, just because you're listening to the show today. So let's change gears for just a minute. And I know we touched about your history, your background a little bit, but if there was something about you that not very many people know, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I'll go a silly direction. I love lawn care. And so this would be an alternative career for me. Is I grew up as a teenager. I had to give up baseball because I was too small. And I took up golf as size didn't matter nearly as much in golf. And so played a lot around, municipal courses in my hometown. And through that process, I just came to appreciate great grass. And so that just has like snowballed, especially as I've become a homeowner and have kids and become a dad, and you're looking for hobbies around the house. Lawn care has really become like a point of study for me, and I nerd out on it. So maybe if I ever start a podcast, it'd probably be about lawn care. So that's something that I don't think anybody would predict given my day job. But that's, asking me about lawn care. I'd love to nerd out about that.
So are you the guy in the neighborhood with the sign that says, "Stay off my grass"?
I think grass is meant to be used. So
there you go.
Why have a lawn if you're not going to have people on it? So
I love that outlook. That's sharing what you have.
Totally.
You may have the prettiest lawn on the street, and you want kids playing it. I love that. That's great. So when you guys ventured out with CharityVest, and you and I have had this conversation about the platform, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. You're wanting to make this available to everybody, because donor advised funds has kind of been the ultra wealthy thing that those people have been able to have these types of accounts for years. And now you're wanting to take it down to the street level, and just a regular mom and pop can have one, a single person can have one. And in doing that, you're teaching more people about the biblical principles of generosity. So with that, why don't you tell us a little bit about, maybe what you're looking for as your average donors, things in that nature.
Yeah, we're trying to solve kind of the bookend problem with donor advised funds. So you touched on kind of making them more accessible to everyone, and I'll talk about that more in a second. But there's another problem at the high end for like the cool things that major donors want to do with their DAF, but don't think they can, or their donor advised fund sponsor doesn't have the capability to allow them. And if they're a large enough donor, typically they would open up a private foundation. And most ultra high net worth donors that I've talked to don't actually have any pride or desire to run private foundations. It's just a means to an end. It's more about the tool. And from a regulatory and legal perspective, there's nothing structurally stopping ultra high net worth donors from doing like much more powerful things through their donor advised fund than they currently have. And typically that's a limitation practically based on the sponsor and their systems. And so that's also kind of the other end of what we want to open up. So I just wanted to briefly mention that. But to your point, yes and amen. We believe that everybody can benefit from an intentional giving tool like a giving account. Just like, I'm sure any financial planner or any, personal finance nerd out there would say everybody should have a retirement account, at least a Roth IRA. Like everybody should have a giving account. It's a useful hopper to be your collection point for giving, especially because it's tax advantaged, but gives you one intentional place to think about the giving pot of money for your life. And so we think everybody can benefit from that, at least, if not from a tax perspective, then a streamlining all your giving from one place perspective. That is actually really helpful. And we think anybody can also benefit from like splitting the decisions of like giving and giving where. And that's what I described in a little bit of my story that you heard of my wife and I. We suddenly talked more about giving because of this donor advised fund. It was because we split the decision of, hey, we're going to give X dollars every month. But we didn't say it's going to go to Y, Z charities. But we had a commitment to our church. And then beyond that, it was like, what are we going to give to? And so that was always a really fun conversation. Anytime a fundraiser came up, it was like, should we allocate some of our money to this? Or like, how much? It was not like, now we have to have a financial conversation again. So anybody can benefit from this idea of a giving account, and our technology enables them to run much, much lower cost. We've automated all the back end operations of the donor advised fund. And through Charity Best, we now offer donor advised funds completely for free. So you can create one in 90 seconds. There are no fees whatsoever to open it up. We only charge fees when and if you choose to invest your balance to grow it tax-free, which is a great thing to do. But if you're a smaller donor or you have very high turnover on the money that you're putting into your donor advised fund, don't invest, and it's free. And so we wanted to create we call them on-ramps, super simple on-ramps to purposeful giving for everybody.
Yeah, you touched on the tax advantage, and what I've run into, and this is really the interesting part, is people who are generous, people who give. Yes, they get a tax advantage, but that's not the reason they give. They give because that's what we're told to do. And in scripture, we're told to be generous. We're told to not let the right hand know what the left hand is doing. Because when we start to think about some of the things that we do and support, the enemy comes in and he kind of tells you, no, you don't really want to do that. But when you give out of a joyful heart, you what I personally found is you can't outgive God. No way, shape, or form. The more you give, the more he gives.
Totally. Well said. I know Todd Harper and others have said you've never met an unhappy, generous person. Like, doesn't exist. No one's ever regretted being generous. So it's just, it's absolutely a gift to be able to step into this. And one of the things that we've discovered is actually behavioral patterns with the tools are helpful to help people like get a taste and to step in to that stream. And so that's what's made us so passionate about being tool makers for giving.
And I can absolutely see we're offering everybody a free account. Just give it a try. Just try this. And as they can see what generosity does, not only for themselves, but the impact that they can have by making a difference in the world of a nonprofit or a church or whatever it may be, it's just a beautiful thing, especially when you are a believer. And the interesting thing is there are a lot of non-believers that still have donor advised funds. They still take care of nonprofits and missions, and whether they're a believer in Jesus or not. And that
Yeah.
always amazed me that seriously, there are some really big donors out there that have no clue who Jesus really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I was listening to an ultra high net worth donor. Was talking about their giving, and they said, I had a choice, when it came to selling my company. I could either give these dollars to Uncle Sam, or I could give them to charities. And I chose, you know what? At least I'll have some control over where it goes. So we'll put it in a donor advised fund. And this person had given not a lot out of their fund yet. They're planning on ramping up some of their giving. That was the context of our discussion. But what an interesting frame of just like, I want to avoid giving money to the government is the reason for their giving. But what was cool about the conversation that we were having is, as we were talking about different things that they could do with their money, the energy level in the conversation actually went up as they like started to get a vision for the types of relationships and types of things that they could be involved in, of like being creative. It wasn't just like, hey, write a check to a charity, you never hear from them again, but like that was an opportunity to have a relationship with some amazing people. And that's like one of the things that for anybody out there who is listening to this and may not be super engaged in giving yet, like some of the best people on the planet are involved in nonprofits, especially really well-run nonprofits. And people often tell me like, well, what's a well-run nonprofit look like? You kind of know when you interact with a well-run nonprofit. It's pretty self-evident because you get to know them, you hear their heartbeat, their thinking is clear, they're excited, they have a lot of energy and vision, and they're getting you excited. And it's not just woo and like soft stuff, but no, they're talking about like really concrete things that they're doing and what they're aiming for. And it does suck you in. And you're like, wow, these are some of the best, most amazing, inspiring people. And like giving is an opportunity to step into that and be a part of it and partner with it. And the good nonprofits view donors that way, like our partners. You're stepping in, you're joining the team. And so that is just like such a joyful process. And so describing some of those opportunities really got this major donor super excited and got them a taste of a vision for life that they didn't have before, which is kind of cool. So back to your point, Jeff, of like, hey, somebody who's like not a believer at all, who gives to merely avoid giving it to the government, can find a vision for like how they can have a richer life through this process. Kind of neat.
So let me ask you this. Do you guys have anything in place or any tools to help even believers and non-believers alike when they make a decision to support a nonprofit? I mean, are there tools to help them realize that, yeah, that one's really a good one, or that one, you might want to reconsider?
We try to put out good content to help donors know the difference. We don't want to get into the business of adjudicating, which nonprofits are good or not. There are plenty of institutions out there that do that type of thing, and it's a tough game to be in generally, and certainly we don't want to jump in and not do an excellent job. Whatever we want to do, we're going to do it and make sure it's excellent. So it's not a space that we really wanted to jump in, but we do want to educate donors in how to think about and detect ineffective versus effective nonprofits. Well, one thing that we have done, and this is part of a broader trend in philanthropy, is we've launched collaborative giving funds on our platform. They're called community funds, and essentially they're social donor advised funds. They're funds that you or anyone can jump into and give into. Everybody can see the balance, see what the fund is given to over time. There's one administrator who has all the grant making rights, the money out decisions on which charities to support and when. And we're seeing that grow like exponentially on the platform, but we allow folks to set up these funds and recruit capital. And so one of the things that we've found is that we've had a number of donors tell us in either feedback or just outreach and let us know that it really inspired them to get money off the sidelines because they found someone that they trusted. Some of our funds are run by philanthropic or nonprofit experts in particular fields. And so they're trusted authorities on like which charities are good, or when the money is going to go out the door, it'll be highest impact. And that's recruited capital off the sidelines, which is awesome. We want to empower folks on our platform with tools. We want to be the tool maker and then put a powerful tool in their hands and then let them go use it, rather than be in the business of adjudicating what's good and what's not. But certainly we want our tools to help to that end, for more capital to flow to effective nonprofits, for sure.
So what you're talking about with these social funds, these causes that come up just out of the blue sometimes. There was a community foundation, which is an organization in this town that helps people do donor advised funds. But when Uvalde had their shooting at the school, Robb Elementary, a year and a half ago, they immediately set up a support fund for people to donate directly to that to help impact that. So it's these types of funds that can immediately take impact out there, that can help in situations that I really think is really cool. So even if we've got some advisors listening on this call and it's something that's important to them, or something happens in their community, they can jump right on and they can create something for the here and now, like the tornadoes that are happening right now in the Midwest.
Absolutely. Cool. And what's so cool about the example that you described, like a tragedy or a disaster, oftentimes there's this like flash in the pan moment where everybody wants to jump in and give and do something. But a lot of times the needs aren't quite as flash, that second. They're going to unfold over the next few months, even as the sort of situation fades out of the news cycle. And having an intermediary, someone who collects the money and can allocate it out at the right times, could be much more effective because they know the needs on the ground and they know the right timing, et cetera. So these types of funds, like the one you mentioned, the community foundation, so effective. And so we've seen some of that pop up on our platform too, which is awesome. So
what you guys are doing is the same thing that some of these money managers are doing when they talk about impact investing. Someone can donate money or invest in a company that totally impacts the area they're in. And this is just doing it a different way. Instead of investing for a return, we're investing because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Well said. That's awesome.
Sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about, but sometimes I might hit it on the spot.
Well,
so
you're on it today.
Let me ask you, has this been a passion of yours for a long time, this generosity journey that you're on?
Yeah, for the last decade or so. About a decade ago is when I became a philanthropy advisor, and very quickly I got, baptized into the world of generosity. One of the things that struck me was the quality of people that were my clients, like pretty much categorically. So just to give you a quick snapshot of who my clients were, these are people who are high net worth or ultra high net worth, who pretty much all were trying to give a ridiculous portion of their net worth away. Like most people, I think, would agree on the word ridiculous if we were to see the numbers. Like most, in most cases of their net worth, they're trying to actively give it away. And so I think just categorically the person that, and we can discuss chicken or egg, but the person that arrives at that conclusion, like I should give most of my money away, and there's quite a bit of it, and I want to do it strategically, is a certain type of person. And I'm talking about their character and all of the non-financial things about their life. And that is what I think, really caught my attention on a heart level very early on, of like, oh, there's actually a deeper stream here that like I want to figure out what is up with that and try to jump in it. So because these are people who weren't just going on about their worldly riches, but going on about a much deeper story, that money was merely a bullet point in, just like way down in importance, which is certainly not mainstream culture at all. So that got my attention. And my wife and I were also the beneficiaries of some extraordinarily generous people early on in our marriage that has not left us, and we talk about to this day. And so I think just such a clear picture, and I hope everybody gets the opportunity and has a story like this of just people in their life who are incredibly generous to them, to get a sense for like how generosity can change the world. There's kind of an adage that's been flowing around for probably about the last decade in Christian generosity circles, that generosity begets generosity. And you see that pattern in the Bible as well in a few different places, but just like God himself is generous, that he so loved the world that he gave his only son. And then like what is part of the response of receiving the gospel and seeing the beauty of the gospel? It's like, well, we want to give our own lives away. And so that pattern is just incredibly powerful. And I think it's a cool way for the gospel to show up in super practical ways in daily life by giving.
That's awesome. That's such great insight, and God has opened your eyes to that, which is, I wish more people would be able to see that. So that's really cool. So when you're talking about having this passion to give away, Ron Blue at Kingdom Advisors, he always says, how much is enough and what are you going to do with the rest? So as a Kingdom Advisor, these are conversations we are having with clients. How much is enough? I mean, you can't take it with you. The old story is you've never seen a hearse with a U-Haul behind it, with all the possessions. You can try, but it's not going to work. So what are you going to do with it? And there's a lot of people that I have found in the Christian side of life, not necessarily the secular side, the Christian side of life, who really have hard conversations with their children saying, you're not getting it, or you're not getting it all. Because what does that do? Where's their dependency on God if they're just given everything?
Yeah.
So it's just another avenue and being able to show God's strength and his ability to truly, if you truly believe he will take care of you, he does.
Yeah.
All right. So totally. Now you've been hanging around now with some advisors. You were at the Kingdom Advisors Conference this February, and that's where I met you. And what kind of reception are you getting from the advisor world?
Yeah, it's been nothing short of awesome. I mean, we've truly just been blown away with the reception that we've gotten generally. I mean, as you can imagine, particularly from the Kingdom Advisors audience, broadly defined, but from advisors in general, secular oriented ones included. So we just launched our Charity Vest for Advisors product about the same time as Kingdom Advisors officially. We've been talking to folks unofficially for the last few months, knowing that we were going to launch it, but we launched it a few weeks ago and it made the announcement right about Kingdom Advisors, and we partnered with a group called One Ascent down in Birmingham, Alabama, a Kingdom Advisor firm. They were very much at the conference. And so they're active on the platform, launched with their advisors and clients, which has been phenomenal. And we've been stacking up launch partners behind them with other firms who want the same thing. And so just to give you, anybody listening, a snapshot of what we're talking about, Charity Vest is our donor advised fund that we built, that I was describing earlier, that we've made free donor advised funds for everybody. And that is for consumers, anybody off the street. But we've also created, and this is what we launched recently, Charity Vest for Advisors, which enables any wealth advisor firm to launch their own donor advised fund program. And the key part about that is it's white labeled, and we allow custom investments, custom billing schedules on the investments themselves for the advisor. We enable collaborative giving to be a part of the experience, like we were talking about earlier, and enable advisors like full co-pilot access to be their client's partner in giving. So they can see everything, they can do stuff on behalf of the client, and even creating a donor advised fund is super easy. You just basically create it for your client, sends them an email, and then they click a button to approve it, and boom, they have a donor advised fund. So we're trying to take the same approach that we took to like donor advised funds generally, which is like super easy on-ramps. Let's lower the fees. Let's make it a beautiful experience, and let's enable them to do stuff that they weren't able to do before we entered this market. And so that's what we're doing with Charity Vest for Advisors, just to give you a snapshot there. But it's been great. We've got, as of the time of this recording, 14 launch partners that are going with us and launching it, and which has been awesome to allow advisors to say, hey, we do philanthropy and we're launching our own DAF is kind of the headline of part of that.
That's amazing. And let me just make this clear to the listeners that you don't have to go through an advisor to get this. Charity Vest will open up an account for you by yourself.
Yep, totally.
I'm correct on that, right?
Normal Charity Vest is for consumers off the street, donors, come one, come all, it's free. And then Charity Vest for Advisors is our product that we partner with advisors to serve their clients with. And that's the white label part. Yeah.
That's awesome. And, I can see for advisors, this is going to play a crucial role in them, because if we are, at least those of us in the BRI side of this, that truly talk about stewardship and generosity with our clients, it gives us a platform to say, now we can help you with this. And in doing that, it's streamlining your process. You're streamlining it for us. You're trying to help us the best you can to streamline the whole process and to still help the client controlling their assets and helping them along the way. And they get to see the fruits of their labor immediately. And that's the other fun part about this.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to hear some of your stories, Jeff. In the short time that I've been in the advisor space, it's been mind-blowing to me the degree to which clients want to look to their advisor for giving help. Like, how much should I give? Where should I give? Is this a good idea? This is what I want to do. Is this a good idea? And it's sort of been, as a philanthropy advisor, it's been kind of mind-blowing in a sense, but beautiful all at the same time, and really helped us get convicted of like, oh, we need to partner with financial advisors and give them tools and support services and backup to enable them to not defer those conversations or like deflect, but rather like embrace, take up, look at it as an opportunity to add value to their client and be more comprehensive and have a richer picture of money and all those things like you were talking about. So
that's again, I can't tell you enough how much this was actually needed for advisors, because we have for years have helped clients with their RMDs from their IRA, because there's a little known tax law that if they give directly from their IRA, they're not taxed on that money as their income, but it counts. It counts as their RMD. So that helps a lot of people who don't need the income. But we have many more that have non-qualified money that says, I want to give. What's the best way to do it? And you're just giving us another tool in our tool belt, enabling us to help these clients. And that's very much appreciated. So let's button this thing up a little bit. Okay. If there were 3 people that you could talk to that ask them anything in the world, hit their mind, find out about them, who would they be? And you can't say Jesus, because everybody wants that one.
No, it's good. That's awesome. All right. So I'm going to go with dead folks. I feel like it's cheating a little bit to go with anybody who's alive, because, there's a chance that you might be able to, make it happen anyway. But all right. So my dead folks that I would seek out, first of all, C.S. Lewis. Nobody has been more formative my faith than C.S. Lewis, and I would love to hear his testimony of how he met the Lord more specifically. I would love to pepper him with questions on that, because it seemed to be a process. And I, like many believers out there, I don't have a moment where I was prayed the prayer, I became a Christian. I grew up in church, but it's very unclear to me when I first really started following Jesus. I can tell you, bracketed, it was sometime between this age and this age when I really clicked in. But I certainly know where I'm at now. But C.S. Lewis really seemed to be a process, and he was super formative in helping me understand where am I even at intellectually, with God, for God, around God, all the things. So he would be one of them. Certainly gave me the framework for why I even value generosity. So he helped form my mind in following Jesus quite a bit. On a similar plane, I'll go for a second, I'll go St. Augustine. I'm a what you call an armchair theologian. So I have zero actual theological credentials, and no one should follow, any theological teaching that I spit out, but I appreciate it. And St. Augustine's been super formative for me in understanding my faith, and I'll connect it to generosity. I'll sort of make a broad connection to generosity. So St. Augustine's theology is all about what you love, that we're loving things, and that like what we love is ultimately what we value, and that drives our decision making. So there's your 10-second, way too simplistic summary of St. Augustine's theology, but it's helped me see that my daily life is forming what I love. And ultimately what I love is driving the decisions and sort of the outcomes and makeup of my life. And so the act of giving can actually shape what I love. And that simple idea of like its expression and actively shaping what I love is a big part of like why I value giving. And I think tools matter in this space. So I would want to talk to St. Augustine and be like, hey, what do you think of Charity Vest? First of all, is this cool? You want to use it? I'd love to have him as a user. But then I'd love to talk to him about his theology. And if you've ever read anything about, I guess he's got a weird life story in which all that fits. So, yeah. And then right now I'm big on trying to figure out prayer as start. You know what? I'm going to go with somebody who's alive, actually. I'm trying to figure out what a faith framework for startups looks like, and build this out. I'm a Christian. I happen to run a startup about giving, but at the end of the day, it's a fintech startup. We're like building software that moves money. It's got to be super secure, and it just so happens it's in the giving space, and I get the great privilege to talk to folks like Jeff and your listeners about giving. But there's a guy named Paul Graham who founded a group called Y Combinator, which is like kind of the world's leading startup accelerator. And we were fortunate enough to go through it in 2020. Paul Graham wasn't involved then, but he's certainly the founder and the mind behind it. And he's written a lot about startups and what makes them tick. And I don't think he's a believer. I would guess that he's not. But I would love to run by him a lot of thoughts about how a faith-driven startup might be completely different, and run him through that framework to see what he thinks, and ultimately see if we couldn't catch a vision for some deeper conversations and seeking with him. So, all right.
That's cool.
So there's my three.
That's cool. There's your three. I love that. So, but you touched on something that makes me want to bring up and ask this question.
Yeah.
You get to bring your faith to work every day. And I don't know, is that new for you? I mean, I understand you were in the Army before, but bringing your faith to work is a beautiful thing. And does it affect you? Do you enjoy that part of it, that you get to do that?
Yeah. Well, let me qualify something. Although I'm a faith-driven entrepreneur and I am wide open about my faith publicly in forums like this, on podcasts, and everybody on my team knows that I'm a Christian and that's why I'm in this space. However, Charity Vest is a secular company. So not everybody on our team is a believer, and we certainly don't serve just believers. We're serving secular folks in all sorts of places. We serve some secular workplaces with some giving funds, etc. So we're in lots of secular environments, and that was intentional. I believe that like ultimately what we're doing is a culture shaping activity, that we're trying to bring redemptive storylines into secular places and bring signposts to Jesus ultimately. And how we do that matters a lot. And so in a sense, like I am bringing my faith to work in that regard, but we're also a secular company, which is a good thing to qualify. But what that sort of leads me to want to say in response to Jeff and anybody else that's listening is like, everybody brings their faith to work. And I would challenge that, like, there's not a separation between Sunday and Monday at all. And
there's not supposed to be.
not supposed to be. For some people, there are in their minds, but I would advocate, gosh, get a vision, ask for a vision, talk to mentors about what it can look like to bring your faith to work. Because there's a lot of aspects to our vocations, the things that we're called to, that are true for everyone. You know, if you're a believer and you're a follower of Jesus, we're all missionaries. Every single one of us. We're all pastors in some regard, some of us with authority, formal authority, some of us without. But at the end of the day, we're all missionaries and pastors, missionaries to people who don't know the Lord, pastors to other people who do. And gosh, the Holy Spirit is active and working and can create the miraculous no matter where you're at. And the Lord was kind enough with me to show me some miraculous circumstances in the Army. I was, a relatively young believer and trying to figure out what my faith in work was like when I was in the Army. And I was literally praying in the barracks one night. So imagine giant room, waxed, polished floors, and I'm on this metal bed, and there's a guy sleeping above me, or we're all trying to sleep for like our 3 hours or whatever. And I'm praying and asking God to help me figure out, like, what am I doing here? And literally a couple minutes later, as I was like about to drift off to sleep, this guy rolls over from my top bunk and is like, "Hey, you're a Christian, right?" He's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, I'd like to do that." I'm like,
Wow.
Do what? And he's like, become a Christian. Like, I think I don't know why, but I just woke up this morning and I couldn't shake the fact that, like, I need to get right with God, and you're a Christian. And so, like, would you help me do that tomorrow? And the very next day we talked about it over breakfast. We went and saw the chaplain. He was baptized the following week, became a believer. Literally, like, barely even talking to the guy. I knew his name. That's like as much as I was doing, but it was just kind of the Lord to be like, "Hey, you're a missionary. Congrats.
Amen.
Ready to go."
What a story. I mean, that's the way God works. You would have never, ever thought that that's how he would answer the prayer you asked.
Yeah, never.
That is so
Never.
cool. All right. So last thing, what didn't I ask you that you're dying to tell us?
Oh, goodness. Let's see. We've covered a lot of good stuff here, Jeff. Holy cow.
All right.
All
right.
For your audience, I'll throw out some free chicken, as we say here in the South. I live in the Atlanta area. Some free chicken advice out there. If anybody is not aware of the bunching strategy for your clients, I'd love to take 60 seconds and give you an overview of the bunching strategy for your clients. All right. So bunching strategy, everybody's tracking the standard deduction. So all of your clients eligible for the standard deduction. If you have clients that give to charity, especially if they're tithers, and especially if they own a home, you might have some clients that give and have some substantial deductions, but they don't clear the standard deduction. And you're like, oh, you're just giving, you're not clearing the standard deduction. Bunching is taking multiple years of giving and stacking it in one single tax year. And doing it through a donor advised fund is actually a really effective way to do it, because through a donor advised fund, you can put multiple years worth of charitable giving, what you would otherwise give over that time, put it all in a donor advised fund in 1 year, get the tax deduction, and then you can set up recurring gifts or give over time out to those charities over that, like, 2 or 3 years, however much you stack, and the charities don't know the difference. But your client gets a much higher tax deduction. So over that 3-year period or whatever, the total income tax deductions that they get is higher than it otherwise would be by taking the standard deduction for that same time. So we've written a good bit on our website. You can look it up, where we explain this much more succinctly than I just did. But hopefully that is a teaser for the bunching strategy if somebody's never heard of it before.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I know my listeners are going to be overjoyed with knowing now there's something else out there for them to help them, as well as the other advisors that might be listening on this today too. So, ladies and gentlemen, it was Stephen Kump again with Charity Vest. We are so thankful he was with us today. And Stephen, thanks for being on the show. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, Jeff. This is super fun.
You've been listening to the Investing with Integrity podcast with your host, Jeff Tellerico. Tune in on the first and third Wednesdays of every month to hear from other advisors, industry experts, pastors, and more as we discuss biblical thoughts about money and investing. If you have questions about the show or want to find out more about BRI, send an email to jefft@lasallest.com. Remember, this journey is all about putting wisdom over worth, principles over profit, morals over money, and integrity over it all. God bless.